It started on a hot Tuesday in July, 1518. One woman, Frau Troffea, walked out of her house into a narrow street in Strasbourg. She didn't speak to her neighbors, she didn't smile. She just began to dance. There was no music playing, there was no celebration, just frantic, silent twitching in the middle of the street. She danced for hours until her feet were bloody. She collapsed from exhaustion, slept for a few hours, and then she got up and immediately started dancing again. She danced for 6 days straight. But the terrifying part wasn't her endurance. It was that she was contagious. Within a week, 34 people had joined her in the street, locked in the same manic trance. Within a month, there were 400 of them. This wasn't a festival, it was a massacre in slow motion. Welcome to the year 1518 and the town that danced itself to death. Historians today call it the Dancing Plague, but the reality on the ground was far darker than what history books usually describe. These people were not enjoying themselves. Diaries and chronicles from 1518 describe a scene of absolute horror. The dancers were screaming for help. They were begging for mercy. They were weeping in pain, but their legs kept moving as if controlled by an invisible puppeteer. They danced until their ribs broke. They danced until their hearts gave out. At the height of the plague, reports say up to 15 people were dying every single day in the streets. The city council was terrified. They consulted the local doctors, who came up with a diagnosis that sounds ridiculous today. They claimed the victims had overheated blood. The doctors suggested the only way to cure them was to let them dance it out of their systems. So, the council made a fatal mistake. They decided to facilitate the madness. They cleared the grain market to create a massive dance floor. They built a wooden stage, and in the worst decision of all, they hired professional musicians to play drums and pipes to keep the dancers moving. It backfired spectacularly. The rhythm didn't cure them, it acted like a virus. Seeing the stage and hearing the drums triggered a psychological break in the onlookers. The music drew hundreds more into the frenzy. The council had inadvertently turned a medical crisis into a death cult. But why? What could possibly cause 400 people to dance until they died? For the people of 1518, the answer was religious horror. They believed they had been cursed by Saint Vitus. Saint Vitus was a Sicilian martyr who, according to legend, could send down plagues of compulsive dancing upon sinners. The terrifying thing about this belief was that it became a self-fulfilling prophecy. Because they genuinely believed they were cursed, their minds forced their bodies to act out the curse. Before they built the stage, they tried other cures. They tried binding the dancers in cloths. They loaded survivors into wagons and hauled them up a mountain to a shrine dedicated to Saint Vitus, forcing them to wear red shoes and circle the altar. Today, modern science offers 2 different explanations for what really happened. The first theory is biological: ergot poisoning. Strasbourg was a starving city that year after bad harvests. The poor were eating bread made from rotting rye flour. Rotting rye carries a mold called ergot. Ergot contains lysergic acid, the raw ingredient for LSD. It causes powerful hallucinations, violent spasms, and burning sensations in the limbs. It is highly possible the town was tripping on accidental medieval LSD. But ergot doesn't explain how the movements were so coordinated among hundreds of people. That leads us to the second and more accepted theory: mass psychogenic illness. Strasbourg in 1518 was a living hell on earth. Famine had killed thousands. A new, terrifying disease called syphilis was spreading for the first time. The poor were desperate and terrified. Psychologists believe their collective stress levels became so unbearable that their brains simply snapped. They went into a collective trance state, a dissociation from a reality too painful to face. It sounds impossible to us today. We think we are too smart for mass hysteria. But are we? In 1962, a laughter epidemic struck a school in Tanzania. It started with 3 girls laughing, spread to 95 students, and shut down schools for months. In 2011, high school girls in New York suddenly developed uncontrollable tics that spread via social media videos. The dancing plague didn't end in 1518. The human brain is a fragile machine. When the pressure gets too high, the software breaks. In 1518, it broke into a dance. The question is, when the next mass hysteria hits, what form will it take? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this dive into history's darkest corners, make sure to like and subscribe for more.